Hi, everybody, and welcome into Indiana Basketball Weekly, presented by Big Ten Plus. I'm Max Parker, alongside Zion Brown. Zion, a jam-packed week for Indiana basketball.
It sure was a jam-packed week for the Hoosiers. Two big games. They were able to come on top and get both of them done this week behind some major performances.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, again, we're going to start with their game against Illinois, and we'll talk a little bit about Michigan State. But, I mean, this was kind of not an expected talking point going into the week, but all of a sudden social media is full of conversations about whether or not this Illinois-Indiana game is a historic rivalry. But regardless, after dropping the previous four, Indiana's now won the last two meetings between Illinois and themselves.
Yeah, if you go back to the Big Ten tournament last year where IU was able to inch out a victory, and then just last week when they dominated Illinois for most of that game, the Hoosiers really looked sharp in a game where Illinois came in as the favorites, as they should have. They had won 4 straight heading into that one, and IU going to State Farm Arena. We've seen how much struggles they've had on the road throughout the years, and that win was a big one for the Hoosiers to get to stay on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, and I think kind of after some questions even started coming up about the coaching staff and whether this roster was able to gel, I think that was a great opportunity for the Hoosiers to start, especially at the beginning of the week, an opportunity for them to kind of take control of their narrative and right the ship.
And IU controlled the game. They controlled the crowd, too, at the State Farm Center. You know, they were all riled up. It was one of their big newspaper games where they had a Hoosiers or loser signs on all the newspapers and everything. And within 5 or 10 minutes of that game, everybody was seated and pretty silent because they had nothing to cheer for, because Indiana, after the first 4-0 spurt that Illinois went on, the Hoosiers just came out and flat out said, no, we're not losing this ball game. And so they really just controlled that entire environment on Thursday in Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that that's kind of the game plan that you have to follow if you want to take an unfriendly environment and make it friendly. But then after that, they come back to their friendly confines, Simon Scott Assembly Hall over the weekend. And, you know, another game that was by no means projected to be an easy victory for Indiana, and they end up having a great game against Michigan State. For more on that, we're going to send it over to Evan Kamikow for more on how the game went between Indiana and Michigan State.
So long, Sparty. Behind 31 points and 15 boards from Trace Jackson Davis, Indiana gets back to 500 in the Big Ten, defeating Michigan State 82-69.
There's not a person in the country that can honestly guard me, so it is what it is when we hit shots and everything's clicking. We're a great team and we're tough to beat.
I think you're looking at a complete player, man, that's for 4 years that has done it at a high level. He's a beautiful player to watch. I'm just glad he's on our ball club, put it that way.
But it wasn't just TJD who had a big day. Both Tamar Bates and Trey Galloway added 17 points while running the Hoosier offense.
Running that second unit this fall really helped me out and to get me ready for the season. I mean, it was really hard going against Jalen and Xavier. Getting that experience in practice really helped out, and it showed today.
It's all about trust. Tamar, he had been struggling the last few games, and he stepped up and played tonight. And Gallo's been solid. He plays hard. He does all the intangible things that guys don't like to do.
11 days ago, following a loss against Penn State, many fans and experts thought this Indiana team was dead in the water. Flash forward, following 3 big wins against Illinois, Wisconsin, and now Michigan State, there is life once again here at Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
I just think that we finally got acclimated to the new unit that we had in, and honestly, we're just playing for each other.
Sticking to our habits, controlling what we can control. I feel like if we do what we do best, we'll live with the results.
The Hoosiers have found their groove and will be on the road Wednesday against Minnesota. From Assembly Hall, Evan Kamikow, IUS TV Sports.
Thanks, Evan. A great look at what went down against the Spartans. Zion, when the Hoosiers were down 2 of their starters to injury, they really needed to look for someone to step up, and their All-American, Trace Jackson Davis, back-to-back 30-point games. He's been the guy, and he's really filled in that role.
He sure did step up. Back-to-back 30-point games, as you said, for just the second time in Trace Jackson Davis's career. And in Big Ten play, he has led IU in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. Pretty much everything but steals has been Trace Jackson-Davis for the Hoosiers, whether it's in transition, on defense. He's gotten much better as a passer. He is doing it all right now for IU, and he was just voted Big Ten Player of the Week, won multiple National Player of the Week awards as well, because he was by far the best and most dominant player in the country in the past week.
Yeah, no doubt about it that he's going to be leading this IU team against the rest of the Big Ten Conference. Speaking of which, let's zoom out a little bit, take a look at the Big Ten as a whole. Always plenty going on there. Purdue won both their games last week. They sit atop the Big Ten at 8-1, and we just found out recently to start off this week, they're number one in the nation as well. But after that, 8 different teams, have 4 or 5 different wins. It's looking like a race for second place right now.
It sure is. Purdue appears to be the best team in the conference, and right now they have been voted the best team nationally. And there's just a logjam of a bunch of teams that are fighting for number 2 right now. So it's going to be so intriguing to kind of see who makes leaps and who kind of falls off as the season continues in Big Ten action.
Yeah, and another interesting team that's not in that 4 or 5 win group, the Northwestern Wildcats, took down Indiana earlier in the month. And they've got a little bit of an interesting situation coming up here. They've got 6 games over the next 14 days, thanks to 2 games being rescheduled after they were postponed due to COVID. I mean, is this a squad that could make some noise right now in the conference?
It's going to be tough. I mean, Chris Collins has these guys defending really well, but unfortunately, because of what happened with their COVID situation where they had to miss a whole week of games, just playing this much, you're not going to get that much practice time. You're going to be traveling throughout. You know, it's going to take a lot right now for Northwestern to really stay winning in the winning column or even at 500 because of how much they will have to play in the next 2 weeks to make up for those postponements that they had.
Yeah, another team that has a lot of making up to do, Minnesota at the bottom of the Big Ten right now. Indiana heads up north to play them on Wednesday. But if you're the Hoosiers trying to keep this winning streak going, string together a few Big Ten wins, and get back to the top, you cannot count anybody out in conference play.
Absolutely not. I mean, this Minnesota team has beaten Ohio State, so they're capable. Even though they haven't done it that often, they are capable of beating solid, quality teams. So Indiana going there on Wednesday, it has to be a locked-in, a focused effort from the jump. That way you can put Minnesota to bed early and not have to worry about what happens if it's a 2 or 3 point game, you know, midway through the second half.
Yeah, and you mentioned looking ahead. They've got Ohio State on the docket after Minnesota, another team that you mentioned as well. And the Buckeyes come to Bloomington. Feels like a week full of opportunities for the Hoosiers to show the country who they really are, because I think there are a lot of questions after falling down behind in Big Ten play. Now they've worked themselves back, and a great opportunity against the Buckeyes, who, similar situation, but a little bit flipped. They started off very strong, then they lost 4 games in a row, and most recently they come up with a win. And they're going to have to kind of continue that strong streak. So 2 teams kind of meeting each other at turning points potentially in the season.
Yeah, both Indiana and Ohio State have big weeks ahead. If Indiana wins these 2 games, right now they were second in the receiving votes category. They'll be back in the top 25 after seeming like they were on the bubble just about a week and a half ago. And for Ohio State, they're going to play Illinois on Tuesday. Both those teams kind of have to figure out what direction they're going in as far as being in that Big Ten logjam. So it'll be so fun to watch. It'll be a primetime game, 8 o'clock on Saturday at Assembly Hall. Ohio State's quality offense versus Indiana's defense, which has picked back up during the winning streak. It's going to be a blast to watch Bryce Sensabaugh, Zed Key, and those guys come into Assembly Hall and go against Trace Jackson-Davis in the game to try to see, which one of those teams is really more up for the challenge at this point in the season.
Well, there's always so much going on in the Big Ten. Thanks so much for joining us. And to stay up to date on the Indiana Hoosiers at any time, check out @Indiana on BTN on Twitter. And we'll check you back here next week.